Hey there, YouTube. How are you? This is Aimil. I'm not here to take over the channel or anything, but I am substituting in for Agni. She's not feeling so good today, but I'm here for you guys, and I am here to read. Speaking of which, I find myself in the most interesting locations when coming up with the ideas for these videos. I can only imagine some of the creepy things that could possibly be said to have happened in the castle right behind me. So for this week, I'm looking into one of the most fierce, feared, and possibly oversaturated creatures in paranormal romance, the vampire. Many of the legends and encounters with vampires from all over the world go back thousands of years. What's particularly interesting is that Scotland was once viewed as the bed of vampirism, hundreds of years before Eastern Europe became famous for its blood-sucking counts. That means that before there was even a whisper of Dracula, in the late 15th century, both Scotland and Ireland already had their very own vampire myths. You could say that vampires, as we know them, actually stems from lore centered around the British Isles, along with werewolves, changelings, banshee, and other well-known creatures of the night. Enter Glamis Castle in Angus, in what is now called the UK. Now, apart from its other eerie myths about numerous ghosts, a Scottish noble imprisoned as a monster for his deformity, Glamis Castle has two prominent vampire myths. The first holds that there was once a vampire child born into the family that was hidden away, but with that, each successive generation, a new vampire is born into the family. The second is more notable, as it even served as the basis for several plot elements of Ryan Murphy's 5th season of his acclaimed horror anthology, American Horror Story Hotel. This myth states that there was once a worker in the castle who was caught leaning over the body of her victim and drinking his blood. Ugh. As punishment, she was walled up alive in a forgotten portion of the castle and left there to rot. Some stories suggest that the vampire is still alive and waiting to be released. It's interesting to note that no attempt was made to destroy the vampire in the classic way of a stake through the heart, or, as was more common in Scotland, dismemberment of the body and then burning it. And you'll get to see how that particular method plays out in Tales of Atonement, once Martin meets the Mirari. Hi, Cirrus. This myth does raise some interesting questions. Why was the serving woman not disposed of more quickly rather than the slow death of starving? Was she also responsible for the murder of her victim? If so, why was she not executed for that crime? I could go on all day speculating about it, but we really should be moving on to Scotland's legendary vampire, the Baban Shei. This is one of the oldest forms of vampires in Scotland. Mostly found within the Highland regions, its invariability takes the form of a beautiful woman. The vampire is usually dressed in green, the color of magic and the fairies. The Baban Shei, like most forms of vampire, can shapeshift at will. That's pretty intimidating. Think of you came across a family member or a loved one, and it wasn't them. Ugh. While this was more of a specter or a spirit, it does have a number of things in common with the classic vampires, and is still an extreme threat to humans. They are creatures of the night, drink human blood, may sometimes have fangs like the classic vampire, seductive, can't tolerate daylight, can shapeshift into another animal form, sometimes even people, and they are telepathic and can read thoughts. However, there are also many differences that set them apart. The Baban Shei will only rise once a year from her grave. Other names include the White Woman. Oof. The vampires are all female. They stalk their prey in forests and other natural locations. They shun society, keeping to rural areas, but frequently hunt in packs. That's just smart. They have been known to invite men to dance with them before attacking. They use their extremely sharp fingernails to draw blood from their victim rather than fangs. When attacking, the nails are said to turn into talons. That reminds me of Chaotica. Oop, you don't know about her yet. Later, some are said to have cloven hooves for feet that are hidden under their long dresses. That starts sounding more like straight up demons and stuff. A man bitten by a Baban Shei will not turn into a vampire. That's not fair. How sexist. Any woman who is attacked and killed by a Baban Shei will return as one of them. Wow, so no needing to swap fluids or anything like with regular ones where you have to give them your blood if you're a vampire. Of course, building a stone cairn over their grave was thought to keep them from rising. Iron is one of the main weapons used against these vampires. If nothing else, you have to remember, iron is like the enemy of all fae everywhere. And most stories of vampires still do recognize them to be dark fae. They are afraid of horses, particularly if the horses are shod with iron shoes. Iron horseshoes. Probably like if they stomped on them. Oof, yeah, if you're allergic to iron or whatever they are, that's definitely a problem. Therefore, anyone who remains sitting on their horse while confronting the Baban Shei would be safe. The stories of chance encounters with this type of vampire are numerous throughout the entirety of Scotland, and usually entail the actions of a brave young man who escapes from the clutches of his female captor. She could probably keep him for quite some time if she wanted to, for all kinds of things. The stories don't end there, though, and here are four of Agni's very favorites. Number 1. The Blair Atoll in Perthshire has a tale of two poachers taking refuge in a small cottage being attacked by a creature that drank their blood. The pair managed to fight the creature off, and it flew away. The story is very similar to the vampire tale that happened in Fiolar, Aberdeenshire. But this may just be a derivative, as this same story, with the same exact elements, is also told many times from different locations. Story number 2, Vampire Attack in Edinburgh. On the 23rd of November, sometime around the year 1900, A man named Geoffrey Anderson was walking home late in the evening when he witnessed something very unusual. Between Princess Street and Hanover Street, a horse and cart were stood outside a shop. The only light in the street came from within the shop, but Geoffrey was able to make out a large creature crawling from a drain across the street. He couldn't see its legs, but it began to change shape right before his eyes before making its way towards the horse at a rapid speed. The creature lunged for the horse's neck and began to feed, which spurred Geoffrey and another bystander to step in and help the animal. They're braver than me. The bloodthirsty beast disappeared almost instantly, and the horse, though still afraid, was unharmed. Okay, that's crazy. Story number 3. The Evil Monk of Melrose Abbey. Melrose, Roxburghshire, found in 1136, Melrose Abbey was one of the several cistern monasteries to be built along the Scottish borders. But as well as being the final resting place of many famous kings and nobles, these religious grounds are famous for a far more sinister reason. In the 12th century, Melrose Abbey was home to a priest who was never popular among his religious brethren, to say the least. He was known for consistently and constantly breaking the rules, and the other monks had even gone so far as to nickname him Hunderprest, due to the fact he would always go hunting with dogs rather than dedicating his time to God like them. When he died in the spring of 1196, he was laid to rest in the adjoining cemetery. But he was far from being at peace. Each night following his demise, Hunderprest would rise from his tomb to wander the grounds. He would often awaken the other priests with his constant wailing. But even more terrifying, he was also known to drink the blood of the nuns, specifically the women again. Realizing that their prayers and pleas for help were never going to be answered, a group of priests gathered around the creature's grave one night. This time, when the former priest climbed from his grave, the living monks were ready and waiting with a large axe, which they used to behead the undead beast. The following morning, when they returned, blood was still flowing from the Hunder priest's wound. The body was then removed, cremated, and his ashes were scattered in the wind. Crazy that he was still bleeding. It was probably like a combination of all the blood he'd taken. Or something. Weird. Story number 4. The legend of the Gorbals vampire began in the early 1950s. That's kind of recent-ish. When stories of a 7-foot-tall child-eating monster with iron teeth and flaming red eyes began to circulate among the locals. Interesting, considering that most fae and most Scottish vampire can't have anything to do with iron. Someone claimed that the beast had strangled 2 boys to death before draining their blood and feasting on the flesh, and the story spread like wildfire from then on. Though the police claimed to have no knowledge of the missing boys, the children of the Gorbals decided their only hope was to take matters into their own hands. So, for 3 nights straight, a team of over 200 children, aged between 4 and 14, each one armed with knives, bats, homemade stakes, or crucifixes, descended on the necropolis, intending to hunt down the legendary Gorbals vampire. Wow, the fact that it was just a bunch of kids fighting for the future of their village or town, it reminds me so much of Zoomers nowadays fighting so hard for our future. Anyway, thank you, Zoomers, that are doing that. While most people believe that the story was entirely inspired by an American comic book, that I'll link in the description, others are still convinced to this day that the iron-toothed beast still creeps among the headstones of the cemetery he calls home. So, welcome to the first touch on this topic. As the story progresses, you'll see how vampires and other myths begin to play a prominent role as antagonists, heroes, and more, reaching into our protagonists' adult futures. But that's it for this week. Please like, subscribe, and ring my bell to get updated for the next project and to be one of the first when episode 2 Catch and Kiss drops. With any luck, it'll be out next month, definitely by the month after. And we're already working on episode 3, so hopefully you'll have something else to be able to slip into your summer festivities. Our Patreon has a number of benefits for even the casual subscriber. You can support us for as little as $1 a month. Or if you'd like to be able to read our comic ahead of time before the episode even comes out, maybe, then please subscribe to the $10 tier. Our first volume, The Day We Met, is already available. Also, every patron is added to our shout-out list at the end of every video. Here we go! The Observer tier, Shadow Fox. Non-combatant tier, Jace Moreland, Arya Gamari, and Charles Tam. The Keeper tier, Londerlu Men. Thank you so much, everyone. I can't wait to see this list expand in the future. You guys are literally what we're doing this for. We love each and every one of you that comes and watches this every week to help us out, get us that much closer to getting out the next episode. And every time you watch one of our videos from beginning to end, understand that you are personally part of this. We hire people from all over creation to make sure that this is forever a community project in a lot of ways. And you, the community that watches, is definitely a very important part of that. Thank you. Now, a special thanks to the artist of this week's piece. Art from this week was provided by Research on Fiverr. Seriously, Fiverr is a great place if you just want pictures or anything else. You guys can see what they do just by looking at our videos, so go check them out. Look for the link to this specific business in the description and please check them out.